Hello, I'm David Land, and welcome to the INDYCAR Red Pill, the show where we're going to talk about IndyCar racing with no punches pulled and no filter. And yes, I'm probably going to say things in this video that you are going to disagree with. Case in point, if you think the Aero Kit freeze is a good thing for IndyCar, you're a moron. Oh, but David, it'll bring in 2 additional manufacturers to IndyCar racing. Yeah, it'll bring in 2 additional manufacturers when IndyCar actually gets that China race off the ground. Or maybe they'll go to Boston too. Maybe we'll get 2 additional races in both China and Boston to go with our 2 additional manufacturers. It's not like the Aero Kit freeze is some political move by Honda or anything, so that they don't have to spend money developing, their race car, and instead can just throw money at Ganassi and win all the races. What a concept! Oh, yeah, and since this is an opinion show, and because IndyCar fans are still stuck in 1996, apparently, I'm not biased towards CART or the IRL. I mean, look. I unironically own a Buddy Lazier hat, and I've got a Champ Car livery DP01 in the background. Between Trump and Hillary, I'm about as Gary Johnson as you get in terms of IndyCar racing. So the 6-month off-season, which is almost as excruciating as a mandatory caution between NASCAR segments, and yes, I went there, IndyCar returns at St. Pete to a crowd of hundreds. And you know what that means? IndyCar's in St. Pete. That means ABC's returning, the greatest broadcaster that's ever broadcasted IndyCar racing. ABC, otherwise known as Always Bad Coverage. But I'm actually going to give them a little bit of credit here on their broadcast. They actually kind of improved. I didn't want to shoot myself in the face during it, so I guess they did a pretty good job. I thought their analytics system was very good, that actually predicted cautions, the percentage of a caution coming out, the fuel strategy. It kept Scott Goodyear and Eddie Cheever kind of on track, thinking about the race, talking about the race, rather than Eddie Cheever going off on his St. Petersburg compares to Indy how rant again, or Scott Goodyear talking about the weight jacker. I thought, it kept them very focused, and it actually kind of enhanced the broadcast. I mean, Alan Bestwick is usually trying to wrangle cats the whole time, trying to get them back on track. He didn't really have to do that this time. They kind of were able to focus on the race, and despite the fact that they usually missed all the action on track by about 5 minutes while I was screaming at the TV, "Munoz has got a broken front wheel, how do you not see that?" It's an improvement. Another improvement for the broadcast is something that I guess IndyCar is going to use across the board for all of their broadcasts this year, and it's helmet cam technology. Now, unfortunately, they're not using these in the race because apparently there's some setting on the wheel that the teams don't want the viewers and thus the other teams who are watching the broadcast to see. But good grief. Is this maybe the coolest technology I've seen in IndyCar racing for a very long, or just racing in general for a very long time? Now I know everybody's saying, well, they used helmet cams back in 2003. Yeah, but they looked like they were a 240p video on YouTube. I mean, these are crystal clear HD videos that are, right at the driver's perspective, not in the visor, what it used to be. It's actually a helmet cam. It's mounted on top of the helmet, and I thought it did a fantastic job of showing the perspective of the track from the driver's point of view that we've just never seen before. The only problem I had was that when ABC was showing this footage, they kept cutting to the outside of the track. Why are you doing that? It's a helmet cam. Stop showing the outside of the track. You're going to show that the whole race. People will be able to figure it out. Show the whole lap from the driver's perspective. Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be a novel concept? Maybe we should develop a helmet cam for that. Oh, wait, they already did. So the actual race gets started, and the annual St. Pete pileup happened very early this year, before they even got to the newly reconfigured turn 2, turn 3. I don't really know what turn it was, but it's the one that the sports car wankers couldn't take properly. Those gentlemen drivers in World Challenge, they apparently can't handle a flat-out corner, so they had to slow the corner down a little bit for the Indy cars too, and they didn't even make it to the newly configured corner before they had an accident, which involved Graham Rahal, Charlie Kimball, Carlos Munoz, and a few others got damaged, but those were the three guys who were mainly involved. And I have to say, the Rahal fans are going to hate me, but it was absolutely Graham Rahal's fault. Not 100%. I'd say it was 75-25 with Charlie Kimball, but he squeezed the heck out of Kimball. And while Kimball maybe could have backed off, I mean, again, it's the start of the race. You almost have to assume that there's somebody next to you. And Rahal really squeezed Kimball there, and it just caused a massive pileup. And thankfully, less cars were taken out in this one than were in the annual St. Pete pileup last year. So I guess they're improving. So as the race actually got underway, James Hinchcliffe made some big moves early on. He got past Scott Dixon and got past Will Power. And the only thing I was thinking was, rigged. It's so rigged. You know, I was going into my Donald Trump mode because I was thinking, wait a second, we've got the ABC race, okay? And Dancing with the Stars is on ABC. And James Hinchcliffe just took the lead on a street course. Not something he's necessarily known as the best guy in the field at, from Will Power, who we kind of think is the best on the street circuit. So where's my tinfoil hat? So Hinchcliffe is pulling away. There's not much going on. Pit stop start, and Will Power, what a surprise, gets screwed in the pits. He runs over an air hose. That actually really isn't his fault. I mean, IndyCar drivers can't really see that far down. So he runs over an air hose. They forget to throw the hose back as he drives out of the pits. He gets a penalty. So bye-bye, Will Power. You're at the back. But things aren't all that bad for Power, and let's face it, pretty much all the other drivers who pitted before Mikhail Aloshin, a.k.a. the first debris yellow of the race, and only debris yellow of the race, now come to think about it, runs into the back of Tony Kanaan, spilling bumper parts and winglets all over the place, something that wouldn't have brought out a yellow prior to 2012. Isn't it great that Indy cars have bumpers now? It's not like they've prevented the cars from flying or anything, but it sure isn't it great that a huge couple $1,000 piece of carbon fiber that's very fragile and falls off at the slightest bit of contact is protecting a few $100 piece of tire. I'm glad we're not cutting down tires anymore. Boy, I bet we're really saving the teams a lot of money every time those bumpers take the hit that a tire would have. Wait, what? Why do Indy cars have bumpers again? So leaders really get hosed by this. Hinchcliffe, Dixon, and a host of others really get hurt by this. And Dixon was actually complaining after the race about this. He was like, well, we maybe shouldn't have had a yellow for that winglet on the track. I'd be really disappointed in the middle of a fuel stint if that happened. You know what? I'm sorry. I mean, Dixon, I think, has benefited from yellows like this in the past, so I'm not really sure why he's complaining about this. But let's face it, I mean, a yellow could have been brought out for any reason in the middle of a fuel stint. I mean, if you're a race strategist, I think as soon as the first car pits on a street circuit, you almost have to pit as well, because again, how IndyCar yellows are, they close the pits, you can't come in under a yellow. It's almost completely not in your favor to stay out. So if you stay out on a street course, you try to stretch the fuel on that first pit sequence when all the cars are packed together and there's more chances for contact, full course yellows, debris flying everywhere. Sorry, that's on you. So all the leaders come into the pits, and among them is a guy who I would have given the driver of the race to if, unfortunately, his brakes hadn't exploded under the yellow, was Spencer Piggott, a.k.a. the guy I call Spiggy for short. So Spiggy was really moving up through the field. He's driving a Chevrolet for this year with Ed Carpenter Racing on the road courses. He was a 2015 Indy Lights champion. He actually didn't really impress me all that much when he was in Indy Lights, but he got up to IndyCar last year, and I think really did a good job running for both Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, and for Ed Carpenter at the end of last year. He was doing a great job moving up through the field. A lot of people are talking about how the Chevys are a little bit down this year because of the Aero Kit freeze and the fact that Honda has found a little bit more horsepower with their engine. He was moving right up in the Fuzzy's Vodka car. It was all looking quite good, and then the brake caliper exploded. And that has been an issue that they've been having they had all weekend long, and in fact during testing as well. Ryan Hunter-Reay, we'll talk about him later, had a brake failure in the morning warm-up and went head on into the wall down there on Dan Weldon Way. Thankfully, he was okay and was able to race. And in fact, to my knowledge, Spiggy's brake failure was the only brake failure in the entire race. And I will say this: I think IndyCar really dodged a bullet there, because if somebody had had a brake failure at the end of the runway or at the end of one of the really long straightaways, particularly when the cars were all packed together, there could have been a very serious accident. So I really hope they get the brake situation figured out. They're using new calipers, and the new calipers are not working very well with the old rotors, and that's causing a lot of heat, and thus you saw in Spiggy's car, it exploded. So on the restart, Simon Pagenaud leads the race. He's car number 1, the national champion, actually qualified 14th. Very surprising, actually, to see that, considering I think he qualified on the pole last year for this race. But he doesn't stay in the lead for very long, because Sebastian freaking Bourdais takes the lead in the Dale Coyne racing car. And it's like, where did he come from? Now, he was one of the people that Honda threw their extra Aero Kit money at to go bring in back to Honda. He's been running with Chevy since he came back to IndyCar full-time in 2012. Bourdais has been a Chevy guy. He's won some races for Chevy in not-so-good equipment. And here he is again, Dale Coyne, taking the lead, the smallest, least budgeted team on the grid as far as I'm aware, passing the highest budgeted, biggest team in terms of personnel and money, on the grid, with, the national champion, smallest team on the grid getting past. That's crazy. You don't see that anywhere else. And so Bourdais, he starts checking out. The guy is a 4-time champion, but we haven't seen this. We haven't seen this form from Bourdais in a very long time, and it's a lot of it has to do, I think, with the fact that he's got his old Newman Haas crew chief, Craig Hampson, back, who he won those 4 championships in the mid-2000s in Champ Car. The combination is back, and goodness gracious, he's on it. In fact, speaking of Champ Car, the top 3 ended up becoming Sebastian Bourdais, Simon Pagenaud, and Will Power. And I'm sitting here thinking, wait a second, we've gone back in time. It's 2007. Now, the people on Crapwagon probably don't think that, because they're like, oh, they're not running the DPL1. Where's the Cosworth XD motor? But hey, a Champ Car race broke out in an IndyCar race, and for some people, that's the greatest thing that could possibly happen. Another guy who almost won my Driver of the Day award is a guy by the name of Takuma Sato, who's been getting a very bad rap recently with his exploits at the Foyt Racing team. But aside from a crash early on in the weekend, Sato was very, very solid. He was actually the top qualifying Andretti car, would have probably been the top finishing Andretti car if not for a pit lane issue. No fault of his own. An air gun, the right front air gun, just did not work. Cost him a few seconds and threw him back into the clutches of Scott Dixon and Ryan Hunter-Reay at the end of the race. So Sato, actually really impressive. It's his best team he's ever been in with Andretti, and he's starting to show some real pace. We're going to have to see if this continues throughout the year, or if he kind of turns back into the Takuma Sato that we know. But he's looking really good right now. So then maybe the most ironic moment of the race happens when the pole sitter, the theoretically fastest car in the entire race, Will Power, is black flagged and parked by race control for driving too slow. Only an IndyCar. Now, I've heard conflicting reports on that. ABC said that it was a fuel issue. They were trying to save fuel. But now I've since heard that a mechanical issue was slowing Will Power down. Now, I haven't seen any official word on exactly what was slowing him down. Obviously, they didn't get to interview him, either because ABC's incompetent, which I wouldn't put it past them, or Will Power was going full Brian Barnhart flip-off mode, by getting parked by race control. We'll find out eventually, I'm sure, but a really weird situation, and one that I think we haven't seen in a very long time, where the pole sitter, the car that is the fastest, doesn't meet the 105% minimum speed. Very, very strange. So the race continues on. There's no more yellows or anything. It's just a straight fight. There's some fuel mileage involved. It's actually quite interesting, I thought, the end of this race. A lot of people think, it's boring. They said it had the yellow. And to those people, I would say, the cars driving around kind of in a circular motion. I know St. Pete isn't exactly a circle, but generally you want them to be driving around at full speed, at full capability. That's something we call a race. And when the cars are racing and they're racing at a race, isn't that what we're watching for? We don't want to, just constantly have restarts and crashes, right? Isn't that what we're watching racing for? But anyway, Bourdais starts pulling away from Simon Pagenaud. They actually catch some lap cars near the end of the race, and that actually threw kind of a monkey wrench in especially for Pagenaud, who was kind of closing in on Bourdais. The monkey wrench, of course, was that the lap cars were majority Honda powered and Aero kitted, so they played very nice with Sebastian Bourdais, and they didn't play quite as nice with Simon Pagenaud. So Bourdais was able to stretch that lead. There were some concerns about fuel mileage. In fact, this race was very interesting in terms of strategy, and I chalk up a lot of credit to ABC. I know, credit to ABC. But they were able to use their analytics quite well to keep us all up to date on where the cars were in terms of fuel mileage, and it actually lent some drama to the end of the race that otherwise would not have been there if their typical reporting styles had been there. It was very exciting in the last few laps, like, oh, is Bourdais going to make it? And it turns out, spoiler alert, he did. Sebastian Bourdais took the first win of this year's 2017 Verizon IndyCar Series, the smallest, most underfunded team on the grid, crashed the car in qualifying, had to start last, drives all the way through the field, passing 20 cars, including the biggest team, the national champion, defending champion team and driver, Simon Pagenaud, passes him, pulls away, and drives to a dominant victory. Honda's first victory on a street course, I think since 2015, I'm pretty sure. Last time they won, and that was in the rain with Carlos Munoz. I mean, Bourdais' first win since Detroit of last year. Of course, he was driving for Chevy then with the defunct KV team. And Dale Coyne's first win since, 2014 in Carlos Huertas at Houston. I mean, just all around a fantastic win. Again, I can't stress enough how the magnitude of this win when you consider the small team aspect. I mean, this is like BK racing in NASCAR, driving from 40th position on the grid, passing a Penske or a Gibbs car, pulling away from said Penske or Gibbs car, and winning the race. Or in F1 terms, if McLaren Honda drives from the back of the grid, passes Mercedes, and drives away. That is the magnitude of this win. And frankly, if you think about those comparisons I just made, I don't see that happening in those series. IndyCar is the only series in the world where the underfunded guys really have a shot of taking it to Penske and Ganassi when they have the right engineer, the right driver, and the right engine Aero Kit combination. Man, it's special to watch, and this was a special race. So to give my honorable mention of this race, and I've got to give it the driver of the day, I guess not just an honorable mention, but a driver of the day has to go, not to Sebastian Bourdais, ironically enough, but to Ryan Hunter-Reay, the 2012 national champion and the 2014 Indianapolis 500 champion. And despite me listing those credentials, I think he's still kind of an underrated guy. I think people really underrate Ryan Hunter-Reay in terms of his talent level. I mean, Ryan Hunter-Reay started this race in the pits. He had a brake failure in the morning warm-up. Like I said before, he had a crashed car. They repaired the car, had trouble with the ECU, I believe, on the initial start. Thankfully got lucky with that crash at the beginning, which brought out the yellow. He was in the pits. They fixed the ECU. He drives up from the back of the field, similar to Bourdais, and finishes fourth. I mean, starting from the pit lane and finishing fourth, I'd say that's even more impressive than Sebastian Bourdais going from last to first, but not really having any major issues throughout the day. Ironic note about these two drivers as well, Ryan Hunter-Reay and Sebastian Bourdais. I believe both of their first IndyCar race happened at St. Petersburg in 2003. Neither of them won. I believe it was Paul Tracy who won, and ironically, that was the original St. Petersburg race. The very first St. Petersburg race ever. First race for Sebastian Bourdais. First race for Ryan Hunter-Reay. And it all comes together, and they're the two strongest drivers once again at St. Petersburg. Also, Sebastian Bourdais, a resident of St. Pete, so he was a hometown winner. He showed a lot of emotion in victory lane, crying. Well, not quite crying, but you could tell he was emotional. And it's nice to see drivers get emotional about victories. It's something that we've kind of lacked in racing. You know, you get the Lewis Hamiltons that are like, yeah, we did a pretty good job today. You know, we'll move on to the next one, and that's boring. Let's see some emotion. Let's see some Dan Gurney spraying the champagne. You know, good stuff. So I was glad to see Bourdais showing a lot of emotion. So that's it. That's the first episode of the IndyCar Red Pill. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like on this video, and also leave a comment down below if you agreed or disagreed with anything I had to say today. I'd love to read it. That's what the comment section is for a discussion. I've started a discussion. You guys continue it down there. And I can't wait for Long Beach. It's a little bit of a wait. I think it's like 3 weeks. So we'll be sitting around waiting for Long Beach, and hopefully I'll have another IndyCar Red Pill ready to for you to swallow for Long Beach. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube, and we'll see you in the next video.